may happen to be. My name is Jamie Smith, and I am the Interim Vice Provost for Graduate Education here at UC Irvine. And I want to start off by saying congratulations on your acceptance to UCI. For those of you that have already told us you're planning on coming into UCI, welcome to the incredible Anteater family. For those of you who haven't quite registered yet, we hope that these next couple of panel sessions will convince you that UCI is absolutely the place to be. So first and foremost, all of you in this virtual room should be proud of yourselves for already being accepted to grad school, because that in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. And making your transition to grad school can be a large adjustment. So with that being said, I am excited to welcome you to our beautiful campus, and I hope you take advantage of everything that UCI has to offer. I am so deeply proud of our top tier programs, our world-renowned faculty, our extensive professional development, health and wellness services. They're all things that help make UCI stand out above the rest. So in a few moments, I am actually going to leave the Zoom room because I'm going to leave you here today with this wonderful panel of current graduate students and my phenomenal staff who are going to help answer your questions and tell you about their graduate school experience. Every one of these students is currently a grad student here at UCI, and so they'll be able to tell you firsthand what their experience has been like and what you can expect. And thank you all from me for being here. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this webinar off to Mariella, who will be moderating today. And again, congratulations to everyone for getting accepted to UCI, and we hope to see you in the fall. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean Smith. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this graduate student-led panel. My name is Mariela Menendez, and I am the recruitment manager here at the UC Irvine Graduate Division, and I'm excited to be facilitating the conversation today amongst our graduate students and yourself. A few rules before we get started. Please engage. Honestly, that's probably the only rule. Please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom menu bar to ask our panelists questions. I have a set of questions to kind of get our conversation going, and our team will be actively monitoring the chat. So I will now start with intros of our graduate students. I'll call on you, and then please introduce yourself, your current year program, and you may also list what your undergraduate institution was. I'll start with Helena.
Hello, everyone. My name is Helena Garcia. I'm a fourth-year graduate student at the Department of Physics and Astronomy. And I'm an international student. I'm from Spain, so I did my undergrad in Madrid.
Natalia?
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalia Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a sixth-year PhD candidate in the sociology PhD program. And for undergraduate, I went to UC Santa Barbara.
Thank you, Natalia. Olti?
Hi, my name is Olti Murtai. I am a fourth year in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. I went to Virginia Tech for my undergrad, where I studied physics.
Thank you. And Allison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Morehouse. I am a third-year PhD student in the Department of Cognitive Science. I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley, and I study sleep and memory.
Thank you. So as our panelists, as you can see by what the undergraduate institutions that are panelists listed, we all come from different institutions all over the United States. So we understand that picking a graduate school destination is a pretty big decision. So with that said, my first question for the panelists is, why did you choose UC Irvine for your PhD program? And I will start with Helena.
So for me, it was even a huge, like bigger move across the ocean to come here. I was actually I did an exchange program when I was an undergrad in UCI. So I already had a little glimpse or a little touch of what UCI was like. And I really, one of the like, there are several things that I like about UCI. I guess the weather, it's really, really nice. The sun is something that I feel that it makes my days, and it's almost sunny every day here. I love the campus environment. You can, if you like being outdoors, like there's many hikes and you can bike all through campus, and there's many like options to be outside. And also the community. I feel that not within obviously within my department, but I feel that I really feel that UCI it's a very like it's like a little family campus, and that made me feel kind of like that at home, far from home. So yeah, I guess all in all, that those are the main things that I like about UCI.
Thank you. Ulti?
One of the reasons I chose UCI was I was really interested in the research going on in the department. I had a little bit of a weird like acceptance thing because I originally applied for like a different subfield in physics. I wanted to do particle physics originally, and UCI has like a really strong program for that. But then I did like a summer REU research program, and that was more like astrophysics oriented. And it turns out that the person I was working with there was a very close collaborator of my current advisor here at UCI. So I kind of like made that connection really easily. And I always like, through the academic research community, just heard very strong things about the department. And coming from the East Coast, I always wanted to live somewhere sunny. And I did research about like what UCI and Irvine was like. We're pretty close to the beach. And so I like hanging out at the beach a lot. And there's like a lot of different, like, I'm kind of like a foodie. So I like going to like a lot of like cool and exciting restaurants that I didn't have the opportunity to try growing up where I did in Virginia. And so I think that there's just like a really wide net of exciting opportunities that weren't available to me at a lot of the other places I applied for grad school, and also where I originally come from.
Thank you. Natalia?
Yeah, so I chose UC Irvine. Well, first and foremost, I didn't want to leave California. I was born and raised in California, born and raised by the beach. I went to undergrad by the beach, so that was just something that was like really important to me to stay in California. And then, obviously being at UC Irvine, we are 15, 20 minutes away from a really beautiful beach. So that was important to me to live somewhere that the weather wouldn't be too different from where I grew up and where I was able to do a lot of the same things that I did growing up for fun. Um, I also chose UCI because the funding package was most competitive here. So I was offered a lot of like incentives to come to UCI, so that like sweetened the deal. And the guaranteed housing was also a really big factor for me. So here at UCI, or at least the way that I experienced it, is I was guaranteed housing for 6 years, which is my program's normative time to degree. And it's like subsidized housing, which makes it a lot more financially feasible on a graduate student stipend. And on top of that, my partner was also at CSU Long Beach, which is 30 to 45 minutes away. So all of that just made UCI like the logical next step for me.
Thank you. Allison, would you like to add to our conversation?
Yeah, I think that most people already said my answer for the most part of guaranteed housing was a really big part for me as well, where um, that really saved me a lot of money. So I was like able to save up or use my money that per my stipend per month in other ways, like having maybe more fun or doing more activities, buying more food, whatever it is. So that was a big thing. And then another big draw was I wanted to do research that I really was passionate about in a place that made me happy. And so UCI made me happy in terms of the location, like was already mentioned, and then the researchers here there was a bunch of researchers doing things I was interested in. So I could really imagine a lot of collaborations across departments and schools being available to me. And they are, and I've formed those. So I'm really happy.
So UCI is the only University of California school in the system that offers guaranteed housing to admitted PhD students for normative time. So that means if your program is 5 years, you're guaranteed housing for 5 years. So that's a really, really, in my opinion, a really big advantage when you are admitted into a PhD program here at UCI. Among all the wonderful perks like location and weather and phenomenal research. Now, I know one of the things that comes up a lot when considering graduate school is transitioning from undergrad to graduate school. My question for our panelists is, can you talk a little bit about what perhaps are some of the ways that students can prepare for graduate school during the summer? I'll start with Olteen.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a weird experience transitioning to grad school. So the REU program that I did was postponed to the summer before grad school because of the pandemic. So I was like graduating undergrad, REU program in Texas, and then moving to California for my PhD. So it was like boom, boom, boom. And I think the opportunity to be in kind of like an academic, research-driven environment was really helpful to me because it kind of prepared me in the mindset of preparing for a rigorous PhD program. And so I think that, a lot of people that go on to PhDs are actively involved in some kind of research. That being said, if you can continue that research like prior to the summertime, it kind of puts you in the like right mental headspace to move forward with a PhD program. In my case, that worked for me. But another thing is that you don't also want to suffer from fatigue or burnout. So if I see people like smiling in the like panelist list. So if that's something that you're worried about, another thing you can do is definitely just like take the summer off and put yourself in like the right headspace in order to get some rest and set yourself up for success in the program. I would also just research stuff like related to your program. Make sure you connect with people in the department about what classes you need to take. What like doing research looks like with advisors. If you don't have like an advisor you want to work with by now, before the summertime is a good idea to, during the summertime before grad school is a good idea to research that. I'm sure the other panelists will have other stuff to add, but that's what I'm able to come up with just off the top of my head.
Natalia, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so the summer before I started graduate school, I was actually part of the Competitive Edge program. I don't think it happened this last summer because to my understanding, it's being revamped. But Competitive Edge is essentially a program designed to help incoming graduate students, PhD students, get acclimated to the UCI campus and the resources. I don't remember how long it was, but most of my cohort was in it. So I got the opportunity to like really just start developing those friendships with most of my cohort in the program, and we've definitely maintained those friendships. Like we see each other at least quarterly, and I think that was like a really big like that played a really big role in my like success in graduate school thus far. Um, on top of that, I would say if you're able to rest, graduate school is very intense and grueling. So like Ulti said, you don't want to burn yourself out before you even start. Maybe that looks like reading a little bit about like your topic to, stay on top of what the conversations are around it. But I wouldn't recommend like going straight into it like 100%. Definitely give yourself time to rest, relax, and like bask in the happiness of your success of getting into graduate school and like starting this new chapter. And then if you have time, research like the resources that are available to you here at UCI. So I know somebody asked if we had access to like perks and stuff like that. So, you can get familiarized with like what our insurance offers. There is a student, the Eater Recreation Center, which is the gym and pool. Maybe you can tap into getting connected with a therapist or figuring out, who your primary health providers are going to be while you're here. All of those things are really useful things to know, and maybe get a head start on before you start graduate school.
Great. I will, before we transition to one more panelist, I do want to share that our Competitive Edge is our graduate pre-entry program for admitted PhD students. It's an opportunity for students to transition to UCI earlier than the academic year and kind of start familiarizing themselves with the UCI community and housing, if applicable. We also have another program that specifically targets international students. It's the Graduate International Connection, which also serves as a peer mentoring program that helps pair incoming international students to the current UCI graduate community. So those are some examples of a graduate division programming resources that we offered to students as they begin the transition process to the campus. Helena and Allison, would any of you like to add to the question?
I will, first of all, like the advice that other panelists have given, I think they're great. Like maybe like I'm sure you're prepared for it. Like don't overthink it a lot. Like just try to come as fresh as possible. Grad school, like it's a lot on you, so try to be like as motivated as possible to come to UCI. I would say like maybe something that I could add on is don't be shy and maybe contact some. I'm sure you have some like emails from some fellow grad students of your program. Maybe if you want to know more details about your particular program, like write an email, say, hey, like I'm going to be a new grad student here. Do you have any advice? That's also like a great way to like know maybe more details about your like situation and also to make friends. I guess like if you don't know anyone here, that's something that I would like highlight about UCI. I think that everyone's very friendly and having friends within your program and also like maybe outside from your program is going to help you succeed. So just try to like come as open-minded as possible and try to like reach out to people that everyone is friendly and I'm sure they will be willing to help.
Thank you, Elena. And I do want to highlight a comment from one of our attendees. Massive shout out to Selena for translating everything and making the session accessible. Thank you. I think one of the next questions in the chat is a perfect transition to the UCI quarter system. Most schools in the US have the semester system, so transitioning to UCI's quarter system, which is an average of 10 weeks of instruction followed by a finals week, may be challenging. So I'm wondering if, Allison, you can kind of start by talking to us by telling us a little bit about what your experience was transitioning from the semester system to the quarter system here at UCI.
Yeah, I think that it was definitely something I was worried about, but I don't think it's been that big of a deal. Honestly, I think that one thing about grad school coursework, well, okay, I'll say this, depending on your program. If you are in a certain program, this is, certain programs, this is going to be different. But I would say that for most programs, grad school coursework is really about like learning and what you can get out of the course. And so if you are in like maybe a stats based or math based program, and maybe Ulti can say more if this is the case for physics or what, you might have like more tests and midterms. But my experience in more of the social science and cog sci has been that we don't have midterms. Like we'll have projects and presentations in class, and we might have finals, but it's more based on class discussions and being actively engaged in the readings and learning the material opposed to undergrad tests or there's not really like the weeder out classes that are trying to, you have to pass this to get into a certain major. That doesn't exist as much in grad school, at least for the programs I'm familiar with. And so therefore, like the quarter system does feel quicker than the semester system. But it honestly, for me, I've kind of enjoyed it because I think for undergrads, it feels very fast because there's midterms every single week. But since I haven't really experienced classes with that many midterms, that stress level doesn't apply to me. Although it is like cool because every 10 weeks kind of feels like a book ending, and therefore you can reprioritize or have goals of in the 10 weeks I want to do this, and so it kind of allows me naturally to have progress points, and so I've actually kind of liked the shorter time periods.
Helena, would you like to share your experience?
So, can you repeat exactly the question?
Transitioning, yes, transitioning from semester to quarter.
So I I agree with what it has previously been said. I also think that it's different within departments, but grad school classes, I would say, like, you might have some midterms and you might have finals, but it's more project based, I feel, and things go fast, but I believe that it's in my experience, going to quarters makes you be more continuous with the material being covered. So if you like stay like it's shorter and it might seem fast, but I would say it's easier for you to stay committed and stay on track than with semesters. I felt that with semesters it's easier to get lost a little bit on the material and feel, okay, the final is coming too long, like in such a long time. So yeah, it's for my personal experience, it was easier to hold on accountable.
Thank you.
I have something quick I can add as well. So in my program, I was actually mostly only taking exams, but the format of the exams was also a little bit different because the class sizes were a lot smaller for grad school. And so that tended to my courses actually having a lot of oral exams, which is something I never had in undergrad. And so those are like a little scary because the professor is just like, it's like a one-on-one and they're asking you to like write on a whiteboard or write like, on Zoom over paper or something. To like talk about the course material. So it was still a lot of exams, and I had classes where it was a lot of like just like regular like midterms, finals and all that. But I also had the added experience of, different formats of exams. And just a general thing, the quarter system is like very quick. It's like boom, boom, boom. And so I felt like I was just constantly like taking exams and having to study for midterms in the quarter system personally, whereas in the semester system, there was like more gaps in between exams.
Thank you. I think that every academic unit here, we take pride in making sure that our students transition well, especially those students that are coming from semester to quarter. Now, graduate student life is very busy. Most of the time, students are working very diligently on their research projects, their labs, or on the field. Can you talk a little bit about how you have maintained your balance between your academics and your personal life? Natalia, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I actually just responded to somebody asking that in the chat, but I think some of my biggest pieces of advice would be, one, learn how to say no. Like, there are times when you will have to say no to things. You can't take care of everything. I would also say figure out what like your own personal like needs and limits are. That way you can gauge what, again, like what you personally need. And I think don't compare yourselves to others because I feel like so many people have different goals with graduate school, right? Some people want to go into academia, some people want to go into industry, and or other things like that. And the pathways to get there look a lot different for everybody. And yeah, I think that those would be like my biggest. Oh, actually, no, I have something to add. I think sometimes I've also been learning that there's not so much like a perfect balance as much as like I'm constantly figuring out like sometimes I am able to like juggle so many things and sometimes I have to figure out which ball is okay to drop for that moment so that I can focus on like getting the bigger tasks or bigger goals done. So it's like figuring out what is like higher up on your priority list and what can be like paused and like what you can come back to in the future.
Allison?
Yeah, I think that was a great response and answer. Yeah, I think that there are definitely certain times of the PhD where, you have to work super hard to get everything done. I can think of I just had a milestone in my program, and it was truly I was not able to balance in order to balance my work and personal life in order to like meet that goal. And I was definitely focusing more on work, but I knew like once the milestone was done, I would reprioritize and reshuffle. So like there are going to be times, and I think then right after that was done, like I was a little burnt out, rightfully so, and I did less work and I focused more on my personal and mental health, and I just made sure that I didn't fault myself for doing less work than usual. So I think like really kind of knowing that there's a balance between of what is possible. But I think on a normal weekly basis, how I balance is by just trying to stay as organized as possible. And yeah, like Natalia mentioned, just knowing what is it, what to prioritize and what must be done and what would be great to be done. And I think that's like one of the big things to learn in grad school. And I really had some challenges during my first 2 years, but I'm getting better at it now. And I think as you know, and as you understand how to talk to your advisor or your support network, your lab, whoever that is, you can have them help you figure out your priorities, and therefore that will allow for more balance.
Thank you. We are getting a lot of questions about housing on our chat. So I think this would be a perfect time to transition to questions related to housing. What is it like living in the graduate housing community? What do you enjoy about the community the most? I'll start with Ulti.
About the housing communities. I mean, I think that I personally really like the like whole housing thing at UCI. And I've been paired twice with random roommates. They've been great. I think the way it works exactly is they like allow you guys to like meet each other before you guys have to make a decision. And so you're not like forced to take on any person. And that's like a good time for you guys to like set boundaries and talk about like what works for you guys, like living together or not. And I believe you get like one rejection per like, if you have like a room available in your apartment. And so, all of that being said, like the community aspect of it, like there's like various facilities available at the various student housing complexes. So I live like actually right beside like one of the like main offices of the Palo Verde Community Center. And so people will like rent out the units there and like throw like parties and get-togethers and like various like events like birthday parties and like for holidays and what have you. And so there's like they also like close it off because it's like air conditioned during the daytime, which makes it like really nice over the summer if you want to go there and work in like a cool environment. And the other communities have like gyms available on their site. And they also have like gathering areas and kitchens and we obviously we have kitchens in like our apartments, but yeah, there's like a lot of like community like centered areas. And if you have like pets, there's like dog parks, there's like basketball courts, volleyball in some of them. And so yeah, it really feels like nice being able to walk around and seeing like a bunch of like other grad students and familiar faces from time to time.
Anyone else would like to add?
I agree with Olti. I think that UCI housing, it's very nice. It's very close to campus, like generally, like depending on the housing location you're on and the campus location you're going to, but it's like all within like 20-minute walk. Like sometimes it's like 10. I'm less than 10 minutes away walking to my office, which is very nice. And it feels like a little village, like a little family, everyone. And I feel, yeah, I think everyone's very friendly. It's important to set boundaries with your roommates, but I think like that's something that I'm sure that you have already been like I'm sure you have already shared places with someone else. So yeah, I would recommend from the beginning like setting appropriate boundaries and like making the rules clear and have communication. I think that's the key. And once that's all said, like I feel like just within the UCI housing, well, I would add up. There's also like the new they are building new places, so you will probably have like Verano. There's the Verano Towers, which is new housing that's being built, and it's definitely newer. But I have to like I know I'm on the old houses. They're bigger, like they're like more size, like bigger rooms, and the new places, like the appliances are going to be newer, but the space is going to be smaller. So that's something that I guess is something personal, what you want and what you're expecting, but something that you should like be aware of. Um, there's also less storage space on the new places than on the old ones.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to quickly add, I think that I've had my friends that are, working adults come over to my apartment, and they're always very pleasantly surprised about how the grad student housing is. And I think it really has something for everyone. There's the gym that everyone can use in the Verano Community Center. There's shared study spaces that I utilize a lot. There's free workout classes. There's foosball. There's board games. There's music rooms you can use. I forget if I said this, there's like gardening plots you can get. So really like whatever hobby you have, housing offers resources for that. And for the most part, they're free or very, very affordable because they know what our stipend is. So I think that although, yes, you are going to get assigned random roommates, most people have had like really good experiences because, we're all adults. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you. We do have about 15 more minutes left in our panel, so please, I encourage all of our attendees to continue submitting their questions for our panelists using the Q&A feature. Now, I would like to ask this question of all our panelists, because I think the question is coming up a lot, and sometimes being employed, especially as a PhD student, is a very critical part of the experience. So how do you balance being a TA and GSR or sorry, let me rephrase. How do you balance being a TA or a GSR with the courses and your own research? I will allow Helena to go first.
So that's that's a tricky question. I would say I can share my experience from the physics department, and within the physics department is going to really depend on like the it's supposed to be 20 hours, but it's depending on the class that you're being assigned, whether it's a lab or a discussion section, that's going to fluctuate, and also the professor you're TAing for. So it's definitely going to take part of your time, and it's going to like not enable you to work as much on your PhD thesis, I would say, or your like research. And I think this links to the question on how to balance like your own life and your like research. I didn't say anything there, so I want to say that PhD is a marathon, and there's going to be like times that you are going to be able to move more or like advance more on your own work, and times that like you are not going to be able of to like do a lot of work on your own research because of other things. Like one of them can be TAing. So and there's can be times that you have some personal stuff going on, and that's also going to affect like how much progress you make. And I feel that just knowing that it's not going to be like you don't need to be working a lot all of the time. That's not like you just need to keep. I tell myself like move forward, whatever that means. Like sometimes it might be a little bit, some other times it might be like a lot, and don't be harsh on yourself. Like don't try to push too much to you all of the time, or just speak back to yourself. Sometimes we are our worst enemies, thinking that we need to be productive 24/7 all of the time, and that's going to lead to a burnout. And I think that's one of the main risk of doing a PhD. Like you try to work a lot and a certain amount of time when you just have too much things on your plate. And I promise to you that grad school, it doesn't matter. Like you are always going to have a lot of things going on. So whenever like you are assigned to have a TA assignment on top of your research, on top of your personal life, just try to like reduce a little bit of pressure by doing things that are good for your like mental health or your personal well-being. That can be like going outdoors, spending time with your friends, doing sports. Like just try to have a balance, and when you like have too many assignments, like just try to like reduce the pressure from other like some other of the commitments of your program. That's my advice. It's possible, but it's just like learning about yourself. Learning, I think that's something that the PhD is going to teach you. Like you learn a lot about yourself and what are your limits, and try not to push too much on your own boundaries when you have like some other responsibilities that you have to like you have to keep on as a grad student.
Thank you. Ulti?
Sorry, I was actually answering some of the questions in the chat that I saw. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, how do you balance being a TA or GSR
Oh,
with your own research?
so in my experience, I think the first like 2 years are just primarily for you to like get situated and do well in your coursework, and to, do good with like your TAing responsibilities. And research kind of happens like when you have time. At least that was my experience. And my advisor was like very understanding of that. And my advisor also just like wanted me to like get my you know, my bases covered with like the coursework before I moved on with research. And, all of that being said, I did have time like on the side to do research, and that was like primarily like over the summer times. And I think like beyond that, like once you finish your coursework, then like the whole like research thing becomes like really serious. And it really depends on the program. But, for me, I finished coursework in my second year. Sometimes people finish like, like do it really quickly because they really want to focus on research. So they finish like sometime in their first year or like early on in their second year. Um, and yeah, all of that being said, I think research kind of just happens like early on when you have time. But like the whole like balancing act of that, the T in with like TAing put in there as well. Um, yeah, it just what works for like one person might not work for the other. But the advice that I have is just, your first year focus just on like two of those, being TAing and coursework, and then inevitably at some point, like the coursework will drop out of place. And if you receive some like, fellowship or something, then TAing will drop out of place. So if your advisor has funding, then you can just like focus completely on the research aspect.
Allison?
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily have anything to add in terms of balancing. I think that you just have to, you know, understand that you're I've been a TA as my whole program, and you just have to understand that like you are being paid for half your time to come from TA. So um you know, it could take up to half your time, and maybe setting that boundary where you don't spend more than half your time on that, because you obviously have other things, coursework, research. And then I see a question about, are you usually giving or teaching the class? TAs are usually the support network, so you might lead a discussion or a lab section, but in terms of the actual lecture, you are not usually expected to give that. The lecturer or the professor would be giving that. If you want, sometimes you can give a guest lecture, but that's usually optional. Your responsibilities are more of grading and discussion or lab sections. And I've had pretty good experiences TAing. I think UCI does a good job of trying to pair you with a class that you might know about, or it's in your general field. And at least I got like a 2-day training before my first TA experience on like how to TA and what different strategies are for different types of classes. So although you might not be as familiar with the coursework, I was trained on kind of how to handle teaching people something that I might not know much about beforehand.
Could I actually add on something?
Yes.
So there's two things. It I know in my department they do sometimes like give you the opportunity to teach an actual class, so like you're the instructor for the class and you get paid more, but I don't think that's like common amongst every single department. But if that's like something you're interested, like for example, if you want to be a professor moving forward, that's something you can definitely explore. And you also do get paid a little more, and you are assigned TAs that like you oversee if you do that. And the other thing is, the whole purpose of like being a TA is like you work with the instructor. And so, I never had to like come up with like, my own solutions to, problems, or, I was always like really supported by the instructor, and it was always like very, very clear to me on what I had to do. I was always given solutions. I was always, before proctoring exams, we always had meetings to talk about like what kind of questions would come up, and the instructions and guidelines were always really clear. I know people do have like one-off instances of like, bad professors and stuff, but the departments are usually like pretty, they like know where like those professors, who those professors are, and like know to like not typically give them like undergrad classes. But I always felt very supported as a TA personally.
Natalia, would you like to answer the question from the social sciences perspective?
Yeah, so I have been very like diligent about applying to fellowship opportunities, and I've only had to TA 1 out of my 6 years, and it was over Zoom. So I don't know that I have a lot of like practical like in the classroom advice. I would say maybe like make sure you email your students your kind of like boundaries and expectations. Like maybe it'll take you X amount of time to get to an email. If you need feedback, send it X amount of days early, so that way like they also recognize that you are a student with your own responsibilities and your own obligations. I also did want to add in that you can also be strategic about how you go about figure or like at least putting in your request for TAing for somebody. So professors are also given the option to list to like request somebody, and you're given an option to like rank what classes you would like to TA for. So like let's say you have like your committee members, that like you get along really well with them, you like how they teach the class. You can request them, and you can also ask them to request you. And then that way it increases your likelihood of getting paired or like getting matched into that class. because there are I do have friends who have gotten TA assignments where they are responsible for a lot more than they should be responsible for, like putting together lesson plans or figuring out solutions to problems. Like Ulti, you shared, like sometimes some professors don't always provide that support. So I also think like getting to know people in your department and like finding out who to avoid as well is like a really good strategy for figuring out who to avoid TAing for.
What I will share is being employed, whether that's through a teaching assistant position or a graduate student researcher, that does come with benefits, including tuition and fees and a salary. So you're definitely getting compensated for your employment. All right. Thank you all. I think as we get ready to wrap up, what are some last pieces of advice that you would offer to students that are currently still trying to decide what graduate school they should choose starting this fall? Allison, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think maybe where might make you the happiest. I know it's like a very vague and hard response, but I think that for me, people really mattered, and that was my deciding factor. Um, I had spoken to people in the department I was in, and I knew that it was going to be a good community. I really liked the individuals that I interviewed with. I really liked the grad students I met during the interview day. So I really could see myself being in that support network and enjoying my 5 years. So I also was a direct admit, so I knew what my lab was going to be, and therefore I really liked my lab. So that was a big deciding factor for me. And then the other big deciding factor was really knowing that there are collaborations for me from like other people on campus that I want to work with and learn with. And that was also a kind of a safety net for me as well. Like if something came up where my research interest switched, because that happens, I knew that there was other labs on campus that I would be able to change into or could work with if that did happen. So I think it's always obviously a very hard decision if you are making a decision, but I think maybe just like trusting your gut and where you can envision being the most happy, maybe.
Ulti?
Yeah, I think if you have the opportunity to visit the campus, definitely do that. I know most departments offer like open houses or, definitely try to like connect with the grad students, and see if like UCI is like a really good fit for you, personality wise, and do research like on Irvine itself, see like what's around the campus that you might find interesting. Also, this is kind of like a random suggestion, but I came here from across the country and I didn't have a car originally, and that's like kind of a really big thing in Southern California because it's a very like car dependent area. And I think people that like grew up in SoCal kind of like know that, but I did not know that prior to coming here. And then I ended up having like a car shipped out here during my second quarter, and I was much more happier, being able to go places and not having to like walk to the Target, which would like close kind of early here on campus. Um, and yeah, just don't stress it out too much. But I think UCI there's just really something for everyone here. And I don't think like, you can necessarily like go wrong, but do your research on what's here and what aligns with your interests and values.
Helena?
Well, I have to say that what Aldi has just said about the car, that's something that I learned when I was an undergrad here. Like a car is something you need. Like you don't need it within campus, but like UCI is very cozy and familiar, but if you want to enable yourself to do, like, there's a lot of things close by that you want to do, yeah, a car is highly, highly recommended. And I guess, like, just follow a little bit about, like, follow what your heart says, like, just get informed about UCI, what it offers. As I said, like, try to reach out to people and ask them about their experience, but obviously, like, everyone's different, and what you know you best, so just learn and like get as much information as possible. I feel that if you like nice weather, if you like the sun, I feel that UCI is a very welcoming and nice community, but of course, like, that might not be your preference, and that's something that you are the only one that should know. So just like reach out to people and try to know as much as possible, and then like make a decision that makes you happier. That's my advice.
Natalia?
I was responding to a question. Can you remind me of the question, please?
No problem. Thank you all for actively engaging and trying to respond to as many questions as possible. And thank you, attendees, for also submitting valuable questions as you kind of navigate the decision process of graduate school. The question is, well, what advice would you give to students, as right now we're kind of closing in on the national statement of intent to register deadline of April 15th? What advice would you give a student as they're kind of on the tail end of deciding what campus to pick and perhaps why they should consider UCI?
Well, if you're able to negotiate your offer, I would also say, if you're able to go to the visit day, I think they've all passed now, but like if you can go to those, definitely go get to know people. Those are often like you get the best feeling for what the department culture is like. If you're not able to go to a visit day, I definitely recommend looking at their current graduate students and reaching out to folks and asking people if they would be willing to chat on the phone or meet for a Zoom call or just even answer any like email questions. And yeah, I think Allison said this. Like go with what makes you happiest. A PhD is often a really long process, and for me, my logic was I want to go somewhere sunny where I would be happy, like regardless. So that was a really big decider for me.
I didn't realize I muted myself. It never gets old on Zoom. Thank you all for attending our webinar. We really hope that you found this space very valuable and you really consider our campus for graduate education. I also want to add an additional plugin. We do have graduate student ambassadors that are available to answer any questions just about graduate school life here on our campus. I will drop their email in the let me actually drop the form in the chat in 1 second. But if you continue to have any other questions following this webinar, you may contact us via this. Well, you may contact our graduate ambassadors via this form. Just 1 second as I look up the form. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for our panelists for joining us. And thank you, Selena, for taking care of us today with our interpreter services. Thank you. See you soon.